Hey everybody, Rusty Nelson here. Today, let's talk about the new upgrade, the firmware upgrade in the Canon PRO-1000. And it's, I would say it's kind of a game changer. And you're going to find out there's some new additions with this firmware that are pretty cool that will, actually I'm walking into my gallery right now and let me close the door, it gets a little quiet. This firmware is actually going to let you now print images like this. Nice panorama images up to 47 inches, and we'll talk about everything else you should be updating at the same time that you do the firmware. Now, quote of the day, and during that, go ahead and please subscribe and hit the bell. It helps me out a lot and I really appreciate it. I'm glad to see you here. Let's go. Hey everybody, welcome back. Today let's talk about installing the firmware onto your printer. Now this concerns basically the Pro series with Canon, but there are some specific things that you want to do besides just updating the firmware. You need to think about the media configuration tool, the media that's on there, and also the printer driver that is on your computer. Please remember that if you have any questions or if you have comments, please put them down below. I won't be able to answer private emails, but we want everybody to learn from your questions and comments. If you have any suggestions, please feel free to put them in there because a lot of us will learn. I even learned from some of the comments because some of you guys got some great suggestions as far as printing goes. What we're going to cover really quick is the installation of the printer firmware actually on the printer. But you also need to consider a few extra things, and we're going to go through those too. And then at the end of that, I will quickly go over on my magic drawing board on Photoshop exactly what we just covered, because sometimes it's a little hard to understand, and I want to make sure you get each of the steps down and in the right order. And then we'll talk a little bit more about the 3.01 driver that this entails, but let's get started. First thing I do is jump on over to the Canon website and take a look. This is USA. If you look up on the top here, Canon USA, but you can do it for your individual country of origin, and we're going to jump into right here, click on software, and make sure that you have the current version of the media configuration tool. You can simply do that by opening it up, go to help and about, and there's the current version for the media configuration tool. It's a simple download, real quick, and then jump on over to the firmware on the actual printer itself. Click on the firmware section. You're going to see two lines here, one for a Mac and one for a PC. Obviously I'm on a PC, so that's what we're going to deal with. Now this part of it's going to get really kind of confusing because you would look at this and it says printer firmware updater for the imagePROGRAF 1000 version 2.5. So it's actually talking about the updater. But if you read further, it says the updater will upgrade your printer's firmware to version 3.01. To perform this upgrade, a USB cable and computer are needed. If your printer's firmware version is already 2.07, which mine is, or later, the updater is not necessary. The easiest way to keep telling whether you have the right firmware is to check out the date. And I know that I haven't updated mine since 10.01. Jump on over to the actual printer and let it update the firmware, as I am actually connected by an Ethernet cable. So let's go ahead and do that now. Hit OK and we'll light this up. Go to firmware update and you can check your current version. It says 2.07. Now go up to install update. It says that it's going to install 3.1. Do you want to update? So we're going to do this by way of the actual printer. hit yes, and start update. Now I'm not going to make you sit through this, but here goes. Once this goes dark, do not touch anything. And as you can see, it'll start downloading, so it actually looks like it almost turns off. And there we go. As you can see, the light actually goes out. It looks like your power goes out. Don't touch anything. Don't get worried. It eventually will come back on. There we go. And as you can see, we have power now again. As long as everything went well, you will get the update succeeded. Hit OK. Processing momentarily. And now we are updated. If you go back through and hit type paper, now you can see Pro Crystal Grade is in here, whereas before it was not. So we're all set. Now the printer has been updated. 4,000, 2,000, 6,000 users. You can check the current version, but really all you need to do is go to install update, and it'll communicate back and find out whether it has the current version, which this does. Now that we've installed the firmware on the printer and installed the media configuration tool, next thing in line is to jump over, and we want to remove the drivers from your current system. For the Mac users, it will automatically remove the drivers as you install it. But for the PC folks, you want to jump over to Devices and Printers, right-click, Remove Device. Are you sure you want to remove this device? Yes, we are. And that will delete that, and then delete the regular driver, the PRO-1000 driver. Remove device. And yes, so now we've removed both the regular driver and the XPS driver. Jump back over to the Canon website and click on drivers and downloads, and you'll see that you have the two drivers, the XPS driver and the regular driver. For, like we said, for the PC users, you will have to delete the drivers first. For the Mac users, this process will automatically delete the drivers. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the Mac does not have an XPS driver. The XPS driver is used to print, if you want, in 16-bit for the PC users. Click on select the driver, download here on the bottom right-hand side, download, and it will automatically start to download, placing it down the bottom left. Go ahead and open a whole bunch of stuff. Use the printer with a wired LAN. Select this option to use a printer with a wired LAN, which I am using. Next. You want to deactivate this block. It will reactivate once you start loading again. Automatic search. And there it has found the printer. Next. Don't hit update, because if you hit update, it's just going to go back and search again. Registering the printer. Setup has been completed. I do not want to set this as my default printer. Complete. Now if we jump back into our devices and printers, you can see the Canon PRO-1000 series has been loaded. I'm going to jump ahead and going to do the XPS and add that onto this. Something that seems to have changed a little bit. Prior to this, when you loaded on a PC, you would get a separate icon for the XPS driver. But it seems like this time when I loaded it, it didn't ask me to restart the computer until I loaded the XPS driver. And then if we look, we don't have a separate, like the 4000 you see right here, a separate XPS driver. But when you come down to preferences, you can see that there is actually two now. So it's down on a little window that comes off of the arrow there. Right-clicking, printer properties, go to the XPS driver, And what I like to do just to check things out is to go and print a nozzle check print pattern. And once we do that, we'll see that we're actually getting a reading of the ink level so that we know that the driver is talking to the printer itself. Done, and you have the printer driver installed, you have the firmware installed. Remember I told you to load and make sure you have the current version of the media configuration tool. Well, we're going to jump back into that right now. And we're going to use that again. Now I have 3 Canon printers on here, but what you want to do is go out and search for your printers. And what you're going to do once you find them is we actually have to take from the new printer drivers that media information and update it. And that's what we're going to do right now, because if you forget to do this, you're not going to have that information transferred eventually over to the printer. So go ahead and click OK. And what's going to happen now, it's going to go out to the PRO-1000. The software went out and looked at my printer. And this is what it saw on the printer. Now, one of the updates with this latest version is to jump from 25 to 35 registered paper types. Go up to the top and go to Add Save Media Information. Now what's going to happen is it's going to jump out into the wonderful world of the net, and it's going to see what's registered on my printer. Now with this latest update, if you look right towards the bottom here, we have new paper types. Photo Paper Pro Crystal Grade, not registered on my printer. You can see, start to see right along here, you'll see either outdated or registered or needs to be updated. The Pro Crystal Grade paper is one of the new ones, and Heavyweight is not registered. And Barita is a new paper. Everything else is registered except for this right here, which I am not going to do, but there are updates to this available. I'm just not going to choose to load them. Hit next. Now once we hit start, what's going to happen is this program, the software, is going to update the printer. Media information on the printer will be updated. This process cannot be reversed. It can be reversed. It's just what we're going to do as we offload and load cannot be reversed. I will not make you sit through this. We will jump ahead real quick. Jump on over to your devices and printers just to make sure that everything has been updated. Okay, go into preferences. Let's just pick the XPS Driver. And there's Photo Paper Crystal Grade, and if we come down, there's also the Barita Photo Paper. Looks like everything is updated. So now we have updated the printer, the driver, the configuration tool, and everything is updated. But you need to go through that process with all of those each time. And you may want to go back in the media configuration tool every once in a while and make sure there hasn't been updates to the media types. Sometimes it helps to go back and visually kind of recap what we just did, and that's what I'm going to do really quickly here on the Photoshop Magic Drawing Board. Down on the bottom left, we have the media configuration tool that's installed on the computer. Over here is the printer, and up here we have the PC with the 1000 and the XPS driver installed. First thing was to check and make sure that the media configuration tool was up to date, which is 1.4. Then update the drive or the firmware on the actual printer. So we went over, pushed the button, and had it update itself. Then remove the XPS driver, the XPS printer driver, and the 1000 driver on the PC or on your computer. Reinstall both of those, making sure that we did the 1000 first and then the XPS driver. Now we are updated on the 1.4 on the media configuration tool. The firmware is updated, and the new 1000 and the 1000 XPS driver. Going back to the media configuration tool, we asked it to check and compare what media was loaded on the printer itself, and then it asked us what we would like to update and add to the firmware. Then after doing that, it asked, would you like me to mimic what's on the printer and put it onto the XPS driver, the printer driver on the computer, and the 1000? And you want to make sure that you do both of those. At this point, we're done. And that's what all those steps that we went through, what they did. You also may want to think every once in a while to go into the media configuration tool and just have it look at your printer firmware and check and make sure that it's up to date and nothing else has been updated as far as media types. Now let's take a look really quick at some of the things that changed with this new firmware, because I believe it's a real game changer and a pretty big deal for those people that didn't want to get the PRO-1000 printer because it wasn't set up to do panorama. First up, paper size. If you remember when the printer first came out, the PRO-1000, it had a paper size of 17-inch wide maximum by around 22, and then they bumped it up with the next firmware to 25. Well, now they've bumped it all the way up to 17 by 47 and a little bit here or there, smudging all over the place. And now it allows you to get a nice size panorama if you'd want to out of the PRO-1000. So I consider that a pretty big change. Media types jumped from 25 to 35. So now we can store 35 media types. It makes it a little easier and a little more efficient using the printer and jumping through the firmware and software. One other thing too is it looks like there may be some changes. I'm thinking, this is a guess purely, with some of the Canon papers and maybe Hahnemuhle relationship with them, with a Baryta setting that as you know, is a barium sulfate coating, which will actually let you get a little bit deeper into your darker colors and blacks, and also possibly a little bit sharper image with this type of media setting for the Baryta paper. There is something going on with the paper. We got the Baryta media type. There's also a crystal pro grade media type, which leads me to believe that there is some type of new paper or a new grouping of paper. They've thrown the word crystal around before in the past, so who knows whether this is a new type of marketing thing like the red ring type of thing around the products. Anyway, that will be placed in your media types, and that's about it. Thanks a lot for stopping by. I really appreciate it. And if you made it this far, please, now, if you haven't already, subscribe, ring the bell, all that kind of happy stuff. Leave your comments down below, your questions down below, because you'll see there'll be a bunch of people jump in to help you. And there's some people out there, and there's a bunch of people out there that know a lot more than I do, and we can all learn from each other. I really appreciate it. My name is Rusty Nelson. Tune in for some more videos. And remember, the camera is a great excuse for adventure. That's what I always say. I'll see you next time.